Well, what do you say to the kid who's being bullied?
Well, first of all, this is going to sound a little depressing, we have to start really early. Between 0 and 5, of a sense of self, and a sense of self-esteem, and a sense that you independently mean something to yourself. We also have to get, and I use this in a positive way, more tribal, okay? We have to get into a place where people can go to where they have their tribe. We have to get rid of the stratum in school social structure. When my dad finally realized that he was caught up in this dynamic and that's what caused his mental illness, he didn't realize that until 1983. So he kind of held on to this just like it was a fluke, or I went crazy. He didn't understand the roots of his mental illness. So it was through Dr. Olius, a psychologist, I think he's Norwegian, where he pinpointed and figured out that the school social structure is damaging to us. Very damaging. And this goes up into corporate stuff and neighborhood stuff and churches. You know, it's the haves and the have-nots. It's this, I have this and you don't. It's the way in which we separate ourselves, that one-upmanship, constant one-upmanship. And it's terrible in Western societies. But this is what really causes the mental illness. When they see as if they have nothing, and then the bully reinforces that, the bullies are reinforcing what people already are thinking. They just don't invent this abuse. They capitalize what's already in there. It's like any abuser is going to capitalize on your insecurities. The things that are already there, they're going to exploit. And this is what a bully does. So what I would say to the kid being bullied is, first of all, I would ratchet up their self-esteem and talk to them about how important they are, what an incredible member of society they are. But I would also talk to the bully as well. The bully suffers from terrible self-esteem issues, terrible understanding of what power means. You know, people that think they actually have power. It's remarkable to me. I would wonder if that bully is being abused at home, or what his father was like. I think there's an unspoken syndrome of angry father syndrome, you know, where you punish and you yell and scream, and then that gets the job done through fear. I think a lot of us suffer from that. So I think that the first thing I would tell the boy being bullied is it's not his fault. That's the most important thing. That this person coming to you with a power dynamic believes something about themselves that isn't true. Just as it isn't true what they're saying to you. That this all is a lie.
But I'd be afraid to confront a bully. I'd be afraid that the parent would come to me and
then talk to the parent.
How dare you?
Talk to the parent. Get a counselor involved. That's what they're there for. Counselors are begging to be spoken to.
Yes.
Yeah. So that fear that you have is the problem. We have to not have fear anymore. We are so afraid to confront and deal, and now we've got guns on the other side.
But you know, some of the bullies are in what my kids used to call the popular group.
Exactly.
They're not.
Of course they
They
are.
have self-esteem problems.
They have terrible self-esteem problems. Everyone has a self-esteem problem. They hide behind that idea, right?
Their parents have told them they
Yes. The school social structure gets transferred and moved to every other structure we go into. It starts very young. That's why from 0 to 5, we need to get involved. Self-esteem is formed by 3. So we have now 3 generations who've been Ferberized. You know, when you let your kid cry in the crib until they fall asleep. Because some Dr. Ferber thought it would be great because they're going to figure out, oh, I can put myself to sleep. No, they lose trust. They lose trust completely. So from all the generations, these last 3 or 4 generations of children, they've been left to cry in a crib with no one to come help them. In the back, yeah, get over here.
This doesn't address bullying or the winners
That's okay.
culture or our educational structure, but do you perhaps think that the Second Amendment to our Constitution has become obsolete?
Define obsolete.
Well, obsolete in the fact that when it was crafted, America did not have a standing army, a navy, a Marine Corps, an Air Force, a Coast Guard, etc., a militia, National Guards, and now we have all that. And so if you read the Second Amendment part before the comma, you know, why, I don't know why we still have it. I think it's obsolete and it should be overturned.
Off the record, yes. Off the record, yes. Yes, get rid of it. I hate it. Go away. But with the people that I have to dialogue with, the people that I have to create change with, they don't feel this way. So we have to come somewhere. My biggest problem, if I'm going to start somewhere with dialoguing with those people, is the Scalia interpretation of the Second Amendment. We can see a direct correlation of the Scalia interpretation when they said, oh, everybody has a right to a firearm, and then the escalation starts. And I don't like the arguments, well, it's gang violence, as if, I mean, they're human beings. So what, it's gang violence, it's over there, just because you can't see it. It's still human beings, this violence is happening. And the other thing I can't stand, what's the other one that I get all the time?
What do they perpetrate their violence with?
I'm sorry?
And what do they perpetrate their violence with?
Guns. Yeah, exactly. The other one is, well, those are mostly suicides, the 40,000 deaths we have in this country. As if, again, that is not some form of murder or infliction upon other people or families. You know, when there is a suicide, a crater erupts around everybody around you. And you're just going to say, oh, well, you know, that's gun violence or suicide. No, that's a human being. So again, they're dealing with a stratum too, you know? So yeah, get rid of it. But I have to dialogue with people who don't agree with that. So I have to start somewhere. Yes?
You talked a lot about boys, and I get that. Is girls?
Girls are more likely to commit suicide. Doesn't mean there's not bullying with girls, but they internalize versus externalize. This is changing, as it will. It will change. There will be, I guarantee there's going to be a girls' school shooter on a massive level at some point. It will always happen that way eventually. Unfortunately, that's anthropologically true. So, yes.
One of my best friends lives in Littleton, Colorado, and had 2 children in Columbine at the time of the shooting. And it's been 20 years, but it still affects that community greatly. Her kids that were in it, and her other kids, yes, his other kids. One of her children was in 8th grade at the time, and then she said that really affected that class, because the next year when they went to high school, this was all hanging over them, you know, that this had happened at their school, and the upperclassmen said, oh, you can't understand, you weren't there, and you know, that a lot of that whole dynamic has kept on for 20 years, and you know, it's still very much a part of that community. And you know, it's not just something that happened 20 years ago and it's over. It's still very much a part of the lives of people that live there.
Ellen, is it Ellen?
Eileen.
Eileen, my name is Doug. Has that community, to your knowledge, done anything to prevent this from happening again?
Yes, I think they have various programs in the schools and stuff to, you know, try and decrease the bullying and such. But I don't know that it's been widespread or terribly effective, you know, and they've increased the security and all that sort of thing. I think they're probably much stronger on increasing the security than on dealing with the underlying problems, as you know, that you spoke of. So, you know, it's just.
So, to your knowledge, they still haven't solved or haven't worked on the.
Well, you know, I just talked to my friend yesterday, actually, didn't talk about that, but, you know, every April is hard.
Right.
You know, but, you know, it's just widespread, you know, in the whole community. In fact, they had a priest who was young and had not been there at the time, and he might have been a child, but a few years ago, and he told this story, which Barbara, it was just appalled, that he told the story that when he was ordained, just, you know, had just happened recently, that someone asked him if they could buy him a chalice for his ordination. He said, no, my parents are going to get that. If you really want to get me something that I would really like, I really would like a rifle. Oh! Because he liked to hunt. Well, Barbara said, you know, this church when he lived in Colorado, you know, they didn't really appreciate that particular sermon. And we're all, really appalled and felt that the fact that he didn't know enough about the community he was supposed to be serving to know that that would be offensive. But it's a long
Yeah,
term.
I've always thought, and I was bullied as a young boy, and I was told what to do about it, but I've always thought that our educational system is broken and not supportive enough of the people that are bullied and bullies. I mean, I've always thought that we should have men or women that are counselors. Like she said, no one ever talks to the counselors. I think there should be a class with a counselor on how to be in a relationship with each other, with a man, with a woman, with a little boy, with a little girl, and we don't get that. We don't get that nurturing at school, and you hit on it just perfect. No one ever talks to the counselor. That's where
I used to be
everyone should.
The other thing
a
is-
special ed teacher, and I don't agree that the teachers don't know about the bullying. They just don't do anything about it because it's too hard.
Yeah, they don't see it. It's not that they don't know, they don't see it.
Well, I saw plenty.
Yeah, well, good.
I taught special ed kids, and they, and the general population thinks it's okay to pick on special ed kids.
Right. So I think one of the things with Columbine is that for many Americans, not in the know, this was the first, right? It was really just the middle. So there was a number of incidences leading up to Columbine. I don't know if anybody remembers, but the 2 months leading up to Columbine, there were several school shootings. And then we had Columbine. In the initial analysis, this would not happen now, but back then, the psychologist who wrote a book about it said it could not have been bullying because all the bullies had already graduated away from the school. This was in a published book, peer-reviewed, right? And that is just a fundamental lack of understanding of what bullying does to the human brain. Now, my dad was bullied beginning at 4. That's very, very young. Most of it doesn't happen until probably around 8 or so. But when you're that young, your brain, part of your brain matter forms around that idea. And then it can also happen at such a young age that, again, also the formation happens where you view the world this way. All the men that I speak to after this talk, they're almost always in tears saying, this happened to me too. Even more frightening are the men who say, your dad is my hero. Or, your dad did what I wanted to do and he was successful. I hear that more than you can imagine. So we have a problem. Yes,
Just like diverging just a little bit.
fine.
I'm a retired pediatrician. And when I was practicing, this is going back 5 to 10 years, when I stopped about 5 years ago. The statistics at that point were that 1 in 4 households had a weapon of some sort, either pistol or rifle or handgun of some sort. And I would talk to my patients and their parents about gun safety, locks, unloading them, no cartridges, et cetera, separating the load from the weapon, et cetera. The interesting part about that was, well, first of all, I would say, you were sitting in the waiting room with 5 or 6 other patients, and 1 or 2 of those patients had guns in their home, and they couldn't pick out who it was, obviously, because everybody looks, quotes, normal, and nobody would have a gun. That was their thought process. But when I would counsel my patients about that, there actually was legislation in multiple states, Florida being one of them, I think, that said that it was inappropriate for me, as a healthcare provider, physician,
Yes.
to counsel you
This
to
is
not have a
law
gun.
in many states.
Exactly.
Wow.
And I could be
Thank you.
held in malpractice for doing that.
Yeah, a gag order.
Gag order, right. And so I think that's another part of the problem, and that if I'm doing something where I think it's helpful, talking about safety, I tell the kids to wear seatbelts, I tell kids to wear bike helmets, I tell kids and parents, don't have weapons in your house, or if they are, do appropriate things to prevent access. And so I think that was a little bit, it was put me in a difficult position as well as the patients obviously. But-
Well, yeah, and the funding against the, what is it, it's the Center for Disease Control or something, is it the World Health Organization, something, they've been also gagged from studying the health effects, CDC, yes. Yeah,
So,
so can we, the 3 magic letters, the NRA, right? This is the result of their lobbying, absolutely. In the back.
The Center for Holocaust Education has a program, and it's a tolerance program, and educators can go to it. And I did it years ago, and it was probably one of the most impactful things that I ever did. And I happened to have the same group of kids 3 years in a row, and they're high schoolers, and in a very, very diverse population that is now probably almost all black. And what they do is they want to frame the question of, and you think about they're talking originally about the Jews and how they were put upon generational, and how do you stop that? And so I always taught night when the kids were sophomores. And then after it, we did a unit, and they have you frame the question of what happened to Ellie and Wiesel and his little story and all that horrible stuff, as you have to have 4 things. You have to have a victim, a perpetrator, a collaborator, and a bystander for the Holocaust to happen. But you can bring that down to a classroom. And so I'd have them do in those days, a PowerPoint presentation, and they could pick some area. Had to be serious, and they couldn't make fun of them. I remember one young man came to me, and he wanted to do midgets. And I said, well, you're going to find something right away. They want to be called little people. And he came to me afterwards, and he said, I cannot believe what people talk about. Like, they want to know about how they have sex and all those. He was just astounded. Another girl talked about, Dove had a wonderful commercial about how most of the pictures that young girls see in magazines are all photoshopped to make them look good. And then the kids that are gay. So that was an opening where some would come out. But what you said about a student being able to stop something, I saw happen maybe 3 times. And somebody was making a sly comment about somebody else's sexuality. And this student, the sweetest little girl you'd never, she said, we do not do that in this classroom. Now, it stopped it, and she had enough respect that it really did stop it. So, but that victim, perpetrator, bystander, and collaborator.
Can I add to that?
Mm-hmm.
You have to have beliefs.
Yes.
Beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
Belief?
But
Any belief. Belief is the most dangerous thing in the world. Belief will cause all the problems. You know, my father used to say, my father became a psychologist, and he used to say to his classes, you don't hold your beliefs hold you. And that bully believes he's popular. That bully believes he has the right to do that, to say that, to be that way. A belief in power, which is an illusion. Harvey Weinstein, total illusion of power. But other people invested in his belief because he knew how strong that belief was with other people. It's all beliefs. So I would agree with all of that for the incident, the role players, but they have to soak in that belief to be able to. Dynamics exist because of beliefs, you know? And there was some, yeah, over here. I'll get back to you, but I just want to, yes.
I really connected when you started talking about it as being a societal issue. There's something wrong with our society. And that's the first time I've ever heard anybody say that in public. I see this all the time, and I get crickets. They don't want to hear it.
No.
It's the easiest way to clear out a room.
Yes,
Our society is fundamentally mentally ill.
yes,
As a social structure.
yes.
And the psychiatrists don't know what to do about it. They're poorly trained. They're
Well,
not qualified.
okay, when we look at childhood trauma that informs adulthood, what is America's childhood trauma?
There's so much.
The genocidal killing of the Native Americans. That was the inception of our country. And we followed that by over 150 years of slavery.
Right.
This is how white Western Europeans began this country. So we have a lot of cleanup to do. We are indeed mentally ill.
Yeah.
Our childhood was about slaughtering people.
Yeah.
So that's where we have to begin. We have to retell history, not as the winner, but just as it was. And so our belief that we are the winners, the rescuers, everything, I am not denying Americans have done that. I am not denying our country has done great things. I think we have, but it's not only that. So anybody who's been through therapy knows in order to heal, you got to go back to your childhood. You got to figure out what beliefs were laid down, the stories you hold true to yourself, which are usually a lie, and we have to come up with that too. We are mentally ill. We create school shooters.
Yeah.
We create a whole life of this, and in the end, a few weeks before the incident, we hand them a gun. That's what we do. Yes.
Yeah.
Very
Well,
deep.
Thanks for saying that and bringing attention
Sure.
to that in public.
Sure. You're welcome.
Are there any programs that you know of that you're especially impressed with regard to purchase in schools, purchase in the church, or an organization?
Sandy Hook Promise, which was developed out of the Sandy Hook tragedy. Sandy Hook Promise has a thing called See Something, well, not See Something, Say Something, but Know the Signs. And it's all about knowing how children are being victimized in school. You look for the vulnerable kids that have been terrorized over the years, and you do something about it. All of their videos, all of their material that they come up with is geared toward that end. It's difficult for me to always participate in watching their stuff and reading their stuff because it's too triggering for me, but I would say that that means they're on the right track. But they have a Know the Signs program where they train teachers, and then those teachers go train other teachers, and it's become a nationwide thing. So I would say, I'm not discounting any other organization, but please give money to Sandy Hook Promise. They really know what they're doing, at least on the end that I'm speaking about. They have the funding, and where they need more funding all the time to do what they're doing. They are educating teacher by teacher about how to do this for all the students. So that would be my number one. But please stay with the Parkland Kids. I would say never go on Twitter, except if you're going on with the Parkland Kids, because Twitter is awful. Yes.
Couldn't even do that.
I'm going to try to be brief.
Okay.
But I wanted to address it.
It's okay. When do we ever have a chance to deal with this? Please, go ahead.
Okay, so there's a few things I wanted to kind of address.
Yeah.
The issue of bullying and teachers ignore or don't know, there's an issue there because every year they should be retrained on what to look for.
Yeah.
Okay, and they're not. And it looks different at different age levels, okay? We had a situation at my school over here, I taught here for 20 years. A young boy, 7th grade, and he's real small for his age. I walk in the morning, he's at his locker. The boys are picking him up and throwing him around like a doll. And I immediately had a fit. Now, I went to the teacher, and she said, yeah, but he's smiling. I said, he's smiling because he doesn't know what to do, and he's afraid. They're twice his size. He's unusually small. And so you have to kind of retrain them because they think the kid is going along with it. He's going along with it because he's afraid, okay? Another boy, he has mud from his waist down. Every day in the lunchroom, I said, what's going on here? And he doesn't say anything. His friend said, he plays football, and they constantly throw him in the mud. I said, and you're watching this, you guys? And they said, well, we don't play football. I said, but you see it, you should be saying something.
They don't have the self-esteem to do
No.
so.
And so then I go to the teachers and say, he's coming in with mud from his waist down. That's not normal. You need to watch him. This is bullying. So we need to be training those teachers, and not one time, year after year, to repeat it.
Yeah.
We got 17 new teachers at this school over here this year.
Yes.
17 were gone. I mean, I was one of them, I retired. But are they being retrained to look at it?
Right.
That's an issue. The other issue is, just to say something very positive, we have a high school, St. James Academy, and they are doing wonderful things about bullying. I didn't know this, but they have an anti-bullying policy that every kid and their parents have to sign in the beginning of the year. And their rule is 3 strikes and you're out. Now, to make that work, they set their students up in what they call families, and I'm not sure exactly how it works, but you are pairs You have freshmen, sophomore, junior, and seniors together in a family. They meet twice a week, and in that way, they get to know one another and they support one another. Bullying is not tolerated there. We have students that leave here and go there, and they come back to visit me and say, for the first time in my life, I have a friend.
Good.
So I said to my principal before I left, you know, if we know they're doing such a great job there, and it's so successful, and our kids leave here depressed and go there and come back successful, why are we not adopting some of the things they're doing?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously?
Because it's hard work, and it doesn't.
It is hard
and it's-
work, but
it
gee,
doesn't show
no.
up on standardized test scores. It doesn't show up for the state to get their funding. Their funding is based on standardized test scores.
Well-
Get this, state's funding is dependent on dumbing down everyone. That is what
I
we're
get
doing.
that, but
No
we-
critical thinking skills, no nuance.
Oh, I'll agree with you there.
There's no, if you pass that test, then they get the funding they need.
Her program with that book night, that is something we did at this school in the day.
Yeah.
Those things are not happening anymore, okay? But we see something within the archdiocese that we could be, even if we had to manipulate it somewhat for the age level, but it could be done, and we're sitting here doing nothing about it. And
Why
that's
don't you do
frustrating.
something about it?
Because I'm not part of it anymore at all. I did tell him. I went to him and I said, he told me, he said, well, that might be a good thing at the principal's meeting. So,
You have a great voice, and you should use it. Who cares what they think? Who cares what they think? That's the aim of what I'm trying to say. Who cares what they think? Anybody else? Yes! Speak up!
I notice that there are people here who don't come all the time, and we love to have you continue to come. This is the kind of dynamic group we are, so feel free. We have a calendar, we don't meet every Sunday, but we meet many Sundays during the school year. Please add yourself to this. Good. And I have one more thing to say.
Okay.
I will try not to be, well, I'll try to be as wonderful as Josephine, but I used to do a program of disabilities in the elementary schools. And we would do what we call a pre-test and a post-test. And we'd ask questions like, if you teased a person who is retarded, is that okay? And then things like that. Do people who are blind care if you tease them like that? And then we would do personal interviews afterwards. And in the majority of cases, you get two answers when they say yes. And one was that it boils down to the sins the fathers are perpetrated on their children. In other words, that is the way it is. These kids just are, something happened to them.
Well, because
Or
they're
their
teasing
parents. For
themselves.
example, you say, if a child is in a wheelchair because they ran out and were hit by a car, that's their fault. So you don't have to have the same sense of empathy with them. And the second thing is that they don't know what teasing is. Because they're not smart, or they don't, it's very enlightening how unenlightened these kids are.
Right. Well, when people externalize their internal world. So it's not enough to just teach people how to treat others. We have to teach us how to treat ourselves.
But the derogation of the victim, that's a psychological word. Derogation of the victim means, I don't want to be blind, and therefore I make up some reason why I'll never be blind. And it's a really complicated neurological progression.
Yes. Anybody else? Yes.
Today, there's a long article in the Star. You might have heard about the young girl at Westridge Middle School who pointed a finger at people. Well, the whole story is that she would been bullied a lot. And one of her person who was bullying her asked her, who would be 5 people here you would like to see die or killed? And she went, you, and herself. So they took her to the office and they talked to her and it kind of went away. And then some of the students complained that they felt threatened. And the student, resource officer then talked to him and decided that she was a threat. Took her outside, handcuffed her, took her away.
Yep.
Now, this is the interesting part. She is then considered a felon because she threatened. The week before, 2 boys brought guns to Hawker Grove, and that was a misdemeanor because they found it in the backpack and it wasn't threatening anyone. So that's one story, but the fact that something like this, it could have been handled decently in a counseling office with a principal instead of now her mental image of being bullied by the police and by the administration. They've now sent her to her grandparents in California, but she's still got that, she still is, the court hasn't settled this. And Steve Howe, the district attorney, said, we need to get the legislation to look at this bill about the difference between misdemeanor and felony.
Right. Right.
She's gonna be back.
There was one more hand, yes.
You had mentioned just briefly that your father became a psychologist, because I wanted to know what your father grew up to be when he got out, and did his sentence, or, I mean, how did that hamper him in his life?
So there was a second insanity commission that determined him to be temporarily insane. So they had reversed the initial ruling, which was that he was incurably insane. And when he came up again to be released, they realized it was temporary insanity. Now, when I first found out about my dad, it was right as O.J. Simpson was happening. And I thought, O.J. Simpson, temporary insanity, there's no such thing. Well, then I had to learn. And I'm not commenting on O.J. Simpson, but I do think there's something about temporary insanity. And I think my father did suffer from temporary insanity. Upon his discharge, the warden and what's the clergy, the chaplain, said that it was the president of Susquehanna University, where he got accepted, that said, never speak of this ever again. So he wasn't a felon. There was nothing on his record. He said, never speak of it again, and so he didn't. And he got his degree. He was the first student to get a 4.0 in Susquehanna University's history. He moved to Lawrence to get his master's degree in environmental psychology under Roger Barker at KU, and then got his PhD and became an environmental psychologist. So he basically is the psychologist that works with architects and engineers to build things, so that he's the human component to how they, find out where the bathrooms go, or the gathering center, or the exits, or the stairs, or whatever. That's what he did. And he became a college professor at the University of Arizona for 36 years. He published textbooks, and he was the editor of a magazine for environmental psychologists.
Did the family of the victim ever trace him or want to do civil?
So, yeah, you're getting deep. This is good. This is good. Okay, so in 2003, I dropped out of seminary. And I dropped out of seminary because I realized I didn't kill anybody. I went to seminary thinking I would be better off as a minister so that I could make up for my father's crime. And what I didn't know was that this was very typical of second-generation trauma. That the DNA I inherited was also the guilt and the shame that my father had.